can you train somebody to be a writer? And does training somebody to be a writer just sand the edges off? You can create the conditions for good writing, but you can't force yourself to create good writing. Twitter is a real mind eraser. It's something that Kurt Vonnegut used to say about television. If I'm not writing good stuff, then there's no purpose to my breathing air on this planet. So the thesis of the book is that the world has to be destroyed. It's a reverse dystopian novel. You know, the way things are between men and women in America has to be the worst it has ever been in any human civilization in existence. Most normal people who are given my books actively hate. If you need a job, a corporation has absolute power over you. They can control whether you eat, whether you pay your mortgage, and whether you can turn on the lights in your beautiful home. You can write whatever you want as long as you don't need to eat.
Hey everybody, it is Jack Murphy, and you're back on the Jack Murphy Live podcast. We had a little bit of a hiatus there over the holidays, and then I got sick, and then it was my birthday, and I've been lining up guests for the upcoming spring season here, and I'm super excited about it. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack Murphy Live. Go to the website at jackmurphylive.com, sign up for the mailing list. Go to amazon.com and buy the book, Democrats Are Deplorable. Sales have been really good on that lately. As a matter of fact, had a bunch of tweets go viral over this last week, and got turned on. People turned me on to Nigerian Twitter sphere, Indonesian mom Twitter sphere. It's been quite an experience going global viral with a couple things. But go to Amazon, get the book, go to Twitter, jackmurphylive.com, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. So coming up here, I have got a great guest that I've been dying to have on the show, and I'm just completely thrilled and honored that he's here. He is a multiple-time author, a successful writer, the creator of about 50,000 blog posts, and has just been an extremely prolific and well-known underground writer, and we're hoping to sort of change that a little bit here. But without further ado, let me introduce to you my favorite writer, the best fiction writer in America today, my good friend, Delicious Tacos. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, Jesus Christ, that's a very kind and undeserved intro. I would hardly call myself successful, well-known, or the best fiction writer in America today, but I'll take it.
You know, people always ask, what kind of fiction are you reading these days, Jack? And I'm like, well, you know, I don't really read too much, but I read everything that Delicious Tacos puts out, and you guys should too. And so we're going to talk about that because I know that you have been working very hard to develop your craft, and this is not a sideline thing. This is not, something that you're just doing for fun here and there. This is like a real dedicated lifelong passion that you have. And I really would like to get into a little bit about that because my assumption is that the listeners don't really know anything about my guests. And then that way we can like sort of dive into your backstory a little bit. And, the first thing I wanted to talk about was, how did you get to this point where you're putting out a book, which I for sure think is one of the best pieces of fiction that I've read in a long time, and it's something that everybody should read. Like, how do you get to this point? Where did you start with your writing? What was were you like on the school newspaper, or like how did you get into it? And what's been your journey to get to this point so far?
Okay, well, again, thank you for your kind words about my book. I got to writing what I consider to be a good book by writing horse shit for decades. Like everybody else, that's what you have to do. And I worked at it really hard. I got up early every morning. I wrote every day, and then continued doing that for years and years and years, cranking out horse shit after horse shit. And this book is the culmination of many years of work. It's an extremely short, tight little book, and it took me 3 years of intense writing to write.
No kidding.
When I wasn't writing it, I was thinking about it. I was failing to write it. But, the idea behind it and the feeling behind it was big enough that I could never, with all kinds of self-hatred and self-doubt, I could never doubt that the essential idea behind the book was true and that the essential feeling behind the book was true. And it's a book about hating modern American life and being very frustrated with it and wanting the world to be destroyed. And I keep waking up and I keep feeling that way every day. So
So
it's
before,
not some ephemeral idea that can be easily dismissed. There was a real truth behind it that I sort of had to find.
right. So look, first of all, the name of the book is Finally Some Good News. And on the cover of the book is a giant cartoon mushroom cloud. And at first, the image to me looked a little phallic, so I wasn't sure like what was going on and what was going to happen. But you started to get clues throughout the book. But I don't want to get into the book just yet. I want to
Okay.
back up. I want to back up. I mean, like you're like a writer. You're like a trained writer, aren't you? Like, what's your writing history?
Well, am I a trained? Can there be such a thing as a trained writer? What I was reading this morning was the Kristen Rupinian book. The person that wrote Cat Person in the New Yorker,
Oh,
the
right,
the viral sensation. That's a trained writer. She was an MFA candidate who has a Harvard PhD and has an agent and has a publisher and got $1 million advance and is writing scripts for HBO and selling horror scripts to A24. That's a trained writer. I did not go through an MFA program.
got it.
Um, I, there's two ways to approach it. I mean, can you train somebody to be a writer? And does training somebody to be a writer just sand the edges off? It's impossible to tell. Would I be a better writer if I had gone through an MFA program? Maybe. What I did, I've always written, and I've been writing since I was a kid, and it's what I wanted to do since I was able to form memories. But the reality is, from ages 18 to 28, I didn't do it for 10 years. And I gave
Mm,
up on my dream. And I went to
mm.
go work in Hollywood as a development executive, reading other people's terrible writing for 10 years. And I only got back into writing in my 30s, really. And, had a blog that's even more obscure than my current blog for a number of years before I started delicious-tacos.com. And as I said, I wrote absolute horseshit for years and years and years. And I always thought I'm never going to be a writer. I'm never going to be any good. And, I'm barely there now. I mean, this book, my status as an underground self-published author, this book, last month it paid my rent, my utilities, my car payment. This month it won't.
Nice.
Well, yeah, I sold a lot of books in the first month. I'm selling less in the second month, and it'll kind of, I think for me to make a living, I'd have to have 10 books out that just kind of constantly.
Right.
I wrote another book called The Pussy, which is a collection of blog posts and short stories. And that book, when I launched it, didn't sell virtually anything at all, but it picked up some word of mouth, and now it cranks out. Like, I sell a couple of The Pussy every day.
Right.
And I sell a few of Finally Some Good News every day, and they don't pop. They don't become viral sensations. Hollywood is not calling trying to option the film rights, and publishers are certainly not calling trying to give me a book deal. But they don't die either. They keep going.
Yeah.
People tell other people. God bless those of you out there that are telling other people about my fucking books, and I sell a few of them every day, and the number grows and grows, and someday I'll be able to pay my bills with it. And then God knows what I'll do with the rest of my fucking time.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things that I always looked at it is it's like income properties, and you need to have multiple of them giving you that constant income stream for it to slowly start to build. But a guy that we both know, Goldmund Unleashed, he wrote a book like five years ago called The Introduction to a Camera Game, where it's like he taught guys like how to get a camera, how to use it to, make friends and socialize and meet women. And like, it's a very short book, but like 5 years later, all of a sudden it got picked up and people started talking about it, and boom, he had like a windfall, and it like exploded. So, you never exactly really know, but I think that the quality that I read in Finally Some Good News stands with anything that I've ever read, and I think it's one of those things that just needs a little bit more attention. And it's timeless, it's fiction, it's not tied to the latest news cycle and whatever. So, what's the word? There's a word for that. Oh, evergreen, right? It's evergreen.
Yes.
Like people are always going to, be able to read it. And if it's not for like a contemporary analysis, it's for like a historical analysis. And I like to think that you and me and some other guys, we're writing books that are going to be part of a canon one day. That when people want to examine this time period and this era, they're going to look to these books, and it's going to be, I think, part of the historical record. We just got to sort of get it out there. But you said you worked on this for 3 years, man, and getting up in the morning. So like, just tell me a little bit about that, because I can totally relate.
So I'd always wanted to write a novel. One of the things that you and I share in common is being doxxed and having our livelihoods threatened.
Yeah.
And that actually helped me tremendously. I worked on this book. I say I worked on it for 3 years, meaning I kicked around the concept for 3 years, but really I wrote it by woodshedding on Sundays for maybe a year and a half after I got doxxed, because somebody snitched about my dirty blog about fucking and drugs to my workplace, which meant that I had to go even further into anonymity. And there was a moment there when I thought, well, what do I really want to do? So deliciostacos.com is my blog, and I wrote mostly first person essays about getting laid for several years. And there's only so much milk in the tit on that subject, and I've sucked out more of it than anybody else. 3,000 pages of talking about, drinking and getting pussy is enough for any man. And so what I really wanted to do,
subject will never die.
It's true, but what I really wanted to do was be a fiction writer. And so getting doxxed was a beautiful thing for me. It forced me to transition into a direction that I had really wanted to take, and that really was my dream. And to say that I worked on it for, I tried to work on it for that long. Most days when you try to write, absolute garbage comes out of your fingertips.
Yeah.
What you see in this book represents 1% of the total effort toward it. It's the things that stuck. You really can't force it. And it's like the weather. You just have to accept. You can create the conditions for good writing, but you can't force yourself to create good writing. You have to try and you have to fail.
What are your conditions for good writing? Like, how do you get in the zone?
Okay, number one, wake up in the morning and don't look at Twitter. Don't look at Tinder. Twitter is a real mind eraser. It's something that Kurt Vonnegut used to say about television. Twitter is satanic garbage. When you mention things being evergreen, Twitter represents the very opposite of that. And now I say this as somebody who loves Twitter and has a great deal of fun on it, but it is a machine for distilling the essence of the ephemeral and its agitated energy. And when, as you said, when you write a novel, you're really trying to put something into the ages. You can't expect there's not going to be an immediate payoff for it. You put it into the canon and see if it sticks. God, I sound like such a pretentious.
You sounded like an English professor.
Yeah, exactly. I would definitely be the English professor that was fired for fucking my students.
Yes. That's why I've never applied for that position, I think.
But the rules to create good writing, to create conditions where you might create good writing, you wake up, you take a shit reading a good book. You meditate a little bit, you maybe walk outside and you observe nature for a little bit, and you try to obtain some kind of mental clarity and quiet, and then you just sit down and make your fingers move on a keyboard for several hours. I wrote the backstretch of this book. I wrote in 8-hour days on Sundays only. Saturday, Monday through Friday don't exist because I work a difficult full-time job. Saturdays don't exist because I have a hangover from work. So Sunday really is the only day that I'm a living human being.
Aww.
And those are the days that I got to write. So I wrote on Sundays in the backstretch of the book like it was a full-time job, and it worked out.
Yeah.
But now I'm in a weird position because I edited this book so much and I worked on it so hard. And then I self-published it, meaning I formatted it. I did all this other horseshit with it. And so I don't know if it's good or not. If I was just looking at it before this podcast to try to remember if my own book was good, if my prose was good, if this is something I can really promote and defend. And I really don't know. I can barely recognize the letters as English characters at this point because I've been looking at it too long.
Yeah.
It's gratifying that people like it, but I'm in a weird place because I'm creatively exhausted after writing it. I got nothing to say. If you read my new blog post, it's all recycled shit from 2013. I haven't really started on the new novel yet. And so it's odd to have to promote this thing that I can't know whether I should believe in it or not. You know,
Yeah.
it
How
might
long
be
ago did you send it up to the Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing? Like how
uh,
long?
beginning of December. I had hoped to get it out on October 31st because that's around when, you know, I'm going to use full spoilers for the book. And if you're listening to this and you don't want the book spoiled, like, sorry. But around October 31st is when the first nuclear bomb goes off in the book. And I wanted to put it out on that date, but it got horrendously delayed for weeks. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talk about a creative hangover. I mean, I remember writing Democrat to Deplorable. It took me probably a year and a half. And by a year and a half, that's like, a month of a fit and a start, and then 2 months of like outlining, and then going back and outlining again, and then, writing a draft and then another draft. And I wrote like five full like drafts. And, by the time you get to the end, you're like, I fucking hate it. I don't even want to read it ever again. I don't
yes.
care. And you just want it to be done. Like there's parts of my book that I wish that were better, right? Like I wish the ending was a little bit better, but finally you just get to a point where you're like, good is better than not finished. And I just put it up there. But that creative hangover you talk about, I mean, I think about writing another book all the time, but I don't actually think about writing another book, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I'll do another one, but there's no energy for that just yet. I mean, give yourself a break, dude. If we got uploaded like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, you maybe have like a few more months before that happens.
Yes, but if I'm not writing good stuff, then there's no purpose to my breathing air on this planet.
Oof.
Right?
Yeah.
If I'm not writing something that at least has something true in it, then why the fuck am I alive? I mean, I don't have kids. I don't have a wife. I do my best to be nice to other people and be of service to other human beings, but that doesn't mean shit. I'm a tax-paying citizen. I'm a supportive member of my community. That doesn't mean shit either. I do my best to be a good brother, son, and friend, and that doesn't mean shit either. If I'm not writing something, then there's a sense of real, why am I here?
Do you write just for yourself? No, like non-publication, not blogging, not anything. Do you journal?
I try to do that. That's where all my blog posts come from. I try to never think when I write that this is going to be a blog post, because that immediately ruins it. If you start thinking about your audience, and especially this is, I think, a topic that we'll cover later, particularly what is in part a, quote, manosphere, end quote, audience. If you start thinking about their reactions to things, you're immediately fucked. And if you start writing thinking about how something might play, it's going to be dishonest and you're immediately fucked.
Right.
You have to get all of that out of your head. The good news is my level of energy to be contrived and to try to do kind of like homework assignment writing that serves a purpose is very low. So I have maybe a page of that before everything just devolves into stream of consciousness about, my dick or whatever else is going on that day.
Right. So, in the book, and finally some good news, the latest novel by Delicious Tacos. Everybody should go out and get it. It's on Amazon.com.
It is the highest rated book on Amazon.com.
Highest rated?
Yes, that's right.
In a particular category, or
no? It has all 5-star reviews, right?
Oh, all 5-star reviews.
It's like a movie saying they're 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like,
right. Two reports. No, just kidding. I'm sure you got a lot more reviews than that. And I'm going to go put my own 5-star review in there for sure too, because I give it 2 thumbs up and 5 stars for sure. But as I'm reading it, I'm thinking to myself, this is fiction. It's also critical social commentary. It's also fantasy, I think. And I got the sense that some of it was autobiographical as well. So like, how much of it is really drawn from your own experiences, and how much of it was just, plucked from thin air?
The job parts of it are partially based on a job that I had. I did used to work for a marketing firm that provided data-driven solutions to market-leading brands.
It's so funny to hear you say that after reading that over and over again in the book.
And then a few months into that job, my entire department was laid off in a merger. So I feel no guilt about, retroactively trashing that company because I owe them nothing. So yes, a lot of it is autobiographical. All the parts in the Philippines, except the parts about shady prostitution stuff, which are completely fictional,
Right,
are
right.
true. I
Of
mean,
course.
I went a lot of, so part of the book takes place in Southeast Asia and the Philippines. And I traveled there. I talked to, uh, interviewed prostitutes by the dozens. Uh, I went to I went to the island of Palawan, which was under State Department warning for Americans not to travel there because of the terrorist threat, and a lot of the stuff that happens there involving Filipino ISIS was really happening there. Um, I went to the nuclear missile defense bunker that really exists on the outskirts of Los Angeles, and I really broke into the bunker and I climbed down
No.
into the missile hatch and looked around because I wanted to set a chapter there. And there are guns that are fired in that book that I went to the firing range and rented and just to see what they were like, and that experience went into the book. So a lot of it is really lived, but especially the job portions and the parts where he's commuting to work are all true. And yes, those are all you know heightened third person diary entries in a way. I really was fucking cold calling to brand managers about their goddamn detergent to try to sell them services, rating and ranking their branded entertainment and things of that nature.
Well, the observations, the pithy, very pithy observations that you would throw in, just one sentence in the middle of a paragraph, about like I paid 11,000 and 8,000 of it was interest. Just like little things like that all along the way really felt so relatable, and I think will connect with people because these are the little bits and pieces of modern life that eat away at your soul eventually. And God, another one that comes to mind is like on the highway going to work, driving behind a pickup truck with the pole sticking out the back of it. Yep. I think we've all thought about that pole, ramming into our chest or our face or something like that, and that being the end of the day there. But I think aside from the story itself, I think that the ongoing social commentary that you have throughout the book is really spot on. But I will ask you, it does seem to come with a sense of bitterness. Would you describe yourself that way?
Absolutely. I would describe myself as the most bitter person I've ever met.
How do you, why delicious tacos? You're blessed with such talent. You've got a job. You got a job that you want to protect.
That's right. I do have a good job. That's why you never hear me complaining about it now. My new job is pretty good. It's genetic. I'm genetically miserable. I come from a long line of mentally ill alcoholics, and there's no getting away from it. Look, I'm sitting in my beautiful house right now in Southern California. It's sunny outside. I'm watching trees wave in the breeze. I'm being interviewed on a podcast about my novel that I managed to release, and a man is saying nice things to me about it. Later, I'm going to go to the train station and pick up my fucking 19-year-old girlfriend.
Nice.
I just got my STD test results back and they're all negative, unbelievably. Things are wonderful for me. My life is wonderful, and I'm still miserable, and there's just no way around it. My thermostat is off. There is no curing it. It's just the way I am. I'm a miserable person, and I hope that you can all enjoy it in the form of wonderful art that I create as a result.
Well, it certainly did come out. And you brought up something, alcoholism. And if I remember in some of your earlier writings, you definitely went down some dark paths, but then decided to make a big change. And is that still sort of your daily living? Like, are you abstaining from all of those things that writers have tended to sort of praise to high heavens as a fuel for their art?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I probably can't go into too much detail about. I can't admit in the first person to any felonious behavior anymore, but I am, a sober alcoholic. I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous for almost 5 years. I have enjoyed to the maximum extent every recreational substance that exists, and like half the people in LA, I'm in AA, and a whiny writer in AA, and it's wonderful. I love being sober. If anybody wants to get sober, go to my website, find my email, and email me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. It's a much better life. As much as I complain, you should have seen how shit was before.
Yeah, and and the reason I brought that up is because a lot of people Bukowski, especially, it comes to mind immediately, sort of glamorize their alcohol abuse and how it relates to their art. Did you notice any difference in your production quality, capabilities, your output, your outlook, your prose, anything? Like, did your writing get better?
Yeah, so that's what I thought when I went to quit drinking. I thought if my writing gets worse as a result of this, I'm going to just keep drinking.
Right.
Uh, and unfortunately, the next day when I woke up after being sober, I wrote, and the prose was crisper than it had been when I was drunk. And that's when I knew that I was fucked and I would have to stay sober.
Well, I think good for you and making good choices. I think that I remember Stephen King also said that he thought that he was writing better when he was drunk, but it turns out he was just drunk. So I think for me personally, I can't write if I feel bad, if I feel hungover, if didn't get enough sleep. It's like I have to get up early, be fresh, and my mind clear and clean. I've never had any success with art under the influence. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to DJ, and we would do some things, and that kind of maybe helped a little bit, but probably not. So that's an interesting sort of change for you, and then your productivity went up. And you came out, this book that really, by all accounts, you should be 100% proud of. And maybe the bitterness will go away one day, but hopefully it won't impact your writing at all.
It's interesting that you mention the fragility of your ability to write. This is a problem that I have more with the time of day than anything else. I had a rotten infected cyst in my asshole that almost killed me.
Oh my gosh.
I wrote the morning that I ended up having to go into the emergency room to have emergency ass surgery. I was writing and I just had to stand up instead of sit down to write. You can read, I think it's called Ass Part 4 on my blog. And I'm talking about how my asshole feels like somebody stuck a bottle up there and broke it. And my balls felt like two doorknobs rattling together. And I was in intense physical agony, but writing is the only way to get through it. I think it's the only way that sort of makes the feelings real and puts them outside yourself.
That's for sure.
Now,
Go ahead.
My writing certainly, I don't think it was as good when I was fucked up, but I was more prolific when I was fucked up. I think that's probably just because I had less standards. About half of everything that's on my blog was written when I was drunk, even though really I was only drunk for a year and a half when I was writing it. And then I've done, 5 years sober writing it. I certainly wrote a lot more. I was more willing to write about topical stuff, more willing to try to go for straight comedy stuff. And then suddenly when I sobered up, I got some hoity-toity standards that things need to have some reason to exist.
Yeah. Well, I found that Twitter especially is a place where I get sort of my inspired writing, the writing that just comes to me, or cathartic writing. And I've really been taking advantage of the sort of micro blogging feature on Twitter lately and stringing together, like 15 and 20 tweets at a time to do like little short stories. And those are the ones that are like emotional, that are just like outpouring, that probably would have gone in my journal right. 10 years ago. And then I found that the research and writing for the nonfiction, that was much more mechanical, man. That was much more of a process where it didn't matter if I was feeling inspired. It didn't matter if I was needing to, have a catharsis. It just was like, you got to get this thing done, dude. So you better just start cranking. And I found a little less joy in that process, to be honest. Do you see, is your personal reward any different between your sort of cathartic writing that you have to get out of you, or writing that you're writing for a book that's like hopefully going to pay you, or, do you feel any differences there?
I never think about any of my writing paying me. I assume that I'll never make a living from it and I'll never make any substantial money from it.
Yeah.
And that's not like a doom and gloom thing. I think that way because you can't make it a workhorse. You have to let it be a wild animal. You can't make writing till the field. You have to let it wander around in the woods, eating and killing and doing whatever it wants. I can't also separate catharsis from mechanically writing the book, because the book really it had an emotion behind it, and that was its reason for existing. And every chapter related to that emotion in some way.
What was that? Describe that.
Well, So the thesis of the book is that the world has to be destroyed. It's a reverse dystopian novel. Most apocalyptic fiction, and this is an apocalyptic book, not a post-apocalyptic book. You actually get to see the real apocalypse. Is about civilization collapses and then people are left in a dystopia. So there's this implied our lives were great before when we had running water and electricity and Xboxes, and now things are terrible, that the bombs have fallen and we're being gang raped by, Lord Humongous and his hockey mask. This book is the reverse of that. It's the reality that we live currently in a dystopian, soul-crushing world, and it would be better for those who survived if a flaming atomic holocaust happened, killed most people who exist currently, destroyed civilization and most technology, and our lives were returned to the simplicity of simply having to survive. So
that's a very interesting thing that you've laid out. And now that I've heard it like that, I'm just sort of pondering some of the passages. What I think my favorite line in the whole book is when you describe the day after a nuclear holocaust as feeling like a snow day.
That's exactly right. That was the big feeling behind it. I would find myself sitting at work wishing, whenever you don't live in Southern California, so you don't know this feeling. Like, we have earthquakes out here, and you'll be sitting in your office and you'll be you'll be like, is that a truck going by? And then it'll keep going by for what seems like a long time. You're like, oh, that's an earthquake. And part of you thinks every fucking time, oh, it's going to be the big one. And it's not, oh no, what'll I do? It's, oh yeah, we're all going to fucking die, baby. Today's the day.
And there's a relief in that, right?
Yes, exactly. The relief of not having to participate in this horse shit anymore, of not having to get a bill from your cable company, to call and ask to speak to a customer service representative, press 0 and have it say, I'm sorry, that is not a valid option. Goodbye. Right. In a real cunty voice. That is our entire society is like that. Everything, if you go to your mailbox, 90% of the shit in there is trying to sell you something. 90% of the calls that you get on your phone are fucking robocalls trying to scam the elderly or sell you some horse shit. 90% of people's tweets are fucking sales messages for their garbage self-improvement webinars. Everything, our entire society is based on people selling you the opportunity to buy more shit. It's all garbage. It all has to fucking go. The other element of the world that I wanted to destroy and that I talk about a lot is modern dating, as you mentioned earlier. There's, the chapter about seeking arrangement, and there's, the character is going on all these dates, which are completely autobiographical. All of that stuff 100% happened exactly as it is detailed. And, the way things are between men and women in America has to be the worst it has ever been in any human civilization in existence, because no civilization could have survived with things as bad the way they are now.
Yeah. I interviewed Dr. Jeffrey Miller, the Evo psychologist, a few weeks ago, and he and I came to the conclusion that our current dating and mating markets are dysgenic, and that it is an existential threat, and no productive society fails to provide the conditions in which you can have a market clearing mating mechanisms, which is what we do not have at this point.
What is a market clearing mating mechanism?
It's a fancy way of saying that everybody who wants to get married and have kids can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, I bitch constantly about, I don't know, woe is me. I'm, in my 40s. I don't have a wife and a kid. If I really wanted one, I could have one, and it's my own fucking fault. And I acknowledge this. It's, there's an element of personal responsibility there too. I complain about it because I live in Los Angeles. Well, I continue to live in Los Angeles. I'm not moving to fucking Crested Butte, Montana, or wherever the fuck. I'm not moving to Southeast Asia, where I could have 10 wives, and live on a fucking coconut orchard. Although maybe 6 months from now, that's where I'll be.
Well, as sales pick up, you only need like a tenth of the income to live over there. So there you go.
That's right.
Well, I tell you, that image of the day after, right? Because you bring up such an interesting point that most of your post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic literature and stories are afterwards, and then how you're going to put it all back together to the way it was. And you have a character in your book that represents that, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah. So that you have a character, Kent, I think it was Kent.
Yes. Yes.
Who not Ken? It's not Ken. Stop calling me Ken. If you read the book, you'll get that. Who's like already trying to like rebuild the hierarchies and the dominant structures and whatever in order to facilitate the rebirth of America the way that we knew it. And you totally throw that out the window. And the final scene, I gotta tell you, I had trouble interpreting it. You want to talk about that, or like, what was the sense for your characters in in the final conclusion there?
Are you talking about the final sentence?
Not the final sentence per se, but like, they're walking on the beach and then they find the abandoned mansion and they go into the mansion. There's no food, but there's a dog. Like,
that's right.
What feeling are people supposed to get when they walk away from that?
So all of that is set up in the first chapter, right?
Yeah.
The house and the dog are mentioned that are on the last page are mentioned on the first page. And I don't know, how much do I want to explain what that represents? It's sort of, the first chapter details just how bloated and marketing oriented and bullshit our entire culture and society has become. And the last chapter maybe represents a return to the primal purpose of all of those things. So the house becomes a shelter. The dog becomes something other than what it originally represented. Let's say that. And what's more, when they're walking along the beach, there's a flock. There's a lot of birds in this book. The log line of the book is 2 bird watchers survive a nuclear holocaust. So the last chapter, they're walking along a beach and a flock of birds flies overhead that has significance. It's a species of bird that has been displaced from its natural environment, taken prisoner, and then got free and flourished in spite of its the difficulties that it has faced, and has returned to primal nature. A lot of this book is also influenced by Ted Kaczynski and his manifesto, because I kept thinking, if Ted Kaczynski if you read Industrial Society and Its Future, it's a brilliant book that has no ending. It just stops. And I kept thinking, if Ted Kaczynski could write a narrative ending, he wouldn't have had to blow people's hands off.
Right.
Right. If he'd been a little bit of a better storyteller, he wouldn't have had to hurt people.
When I read books, fiction, and then I hear people giving commentary and critique, and they say, oh, well, the author's use of, this bird in this situation is meant to represent blah, blah, blah. And I always kind of thought that the artist just sort of wrote what they were thinking and feeling without it being premeditated. But you're telling me now that in your fiction book, that reads spontaneous, which means that you've done it masterfully, was also premeditated in its symbolism. Is that right?
Yeah. I have bad memories of English class where they made us pick out all the symbols in books and it really ruined them. So I'm loath to do that with my own book. But yes, everything is absolutely premeditated. And a lot of the work was burying it deep. There's a lot of setups and payoffs in it that I worked on the one I just mentioned in particular is there's a dog that shows up on the first page, never shows up again until the last page. But I knew the entire, when I wrote the beginning of the book, I knew the ending. And, which isn't to say, look, there's a lot of birds in the book and not all of them are symbolic in Roman augury. There is really don't look at it as a homework assignment, let it wash over you. But the birds in the end in particular, the last chapter is called Birds of the Amazon.
Right.
And I'm glad that, thank you for the way you've described it, because then what you worry about is it being too heavy-handed and being too on the nose. Which it shouldn't be. Like, things that you put in there, images that you put in there that mean something should be absorbed by people's subconscious instead of things that they feel like they have to academically track and pick out.
Right.
And, the reason that the book is told out of chronological time is to bury a lot of that stuff, is to diffuse it and you're meant to sort of let it wash over you.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about one more piece of the technical aspect of the book is I didn't it didn't strike me as being sort of like out of, well, I guess it is out of chronology, but mainly I took away that there was like multiple timelines, but they both were leading you up to the conclusion. So can you
Yes.
talk about that? Because I mean, I found that to be exceptional technique and craft, something that I've not been able to do even in my doodlings at home. Is create parallel, nonlinear timelines, but that are all on the same path, leading you to the same sort of final destination.
Yeah, that was the thing that I worried about the most, or one of the things I really worried about. And again, it brings me great relief whenever people say that they understood and appreciated it, because if I fucked it up, this book would be fucked. But so there's three timelines. It's real fucking complicated, and the timelines were laid out. This is another thing that when I wasn't writing the book, I was walking around on my lunch break, like dictating into the notes in my phone, like how these chapters might fit together. There were certain beats I wanted to hit. There are certain. Can you hear that siren in the background?
I can, but man, it just, it's gritty,
Yeah,
dude. It's real
yeah,
life.
exactly. That's right. I'm in the hood here, so
Yeah, I bet.
that's the cops on their way to pop the master criminals that live in this neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, the real point of the chapters being told out of order is so that certain emotional beats can be next to each other, um, so that you can contrast the intimacy that the two main characters experience with the distance that they experience, so they're really close after the bombs hit, and they're really distant before the bombs hit, and those two moments are next to each other. Um,
Damn,
but it's
that's
there's
great.
there's three timelines in the book. There's also each timeline has its own structure that leads to a different place. So the first timeline one kind of leads nowhere. Like the character doesn't experience any growth. He doesn't experience any success. Timeline two almost gets there, and then he backs out. And then timeline three, which chronologically happens at the end, but which is peppered throughout the book, is when he really experiences, in a Hollywood character arc sense, some kind of triumph.
Right,
Um,
right,
and
right.
it's corny as hell to say all that shit, but I really
No,
did
but
put
it's
a lot
so
of.
it's so true though, and it's so evident. Like I said, the craft and the technique that comes out in the book is so evident, and the writing is so tight, and there's not one superfluous word in all the copy anywhere.
Thank
And
you.
in fact, there's some sentences that don't even have verbs,
Yeah, I cut. That's
which I
my
really
my
like.
my editing process is cut and cut and cut until I can't fucking cut anymore.
Yeah,
And it reads better. Things just read better that way. People need to, learning how to edit is here's the good news about writing, right? Or for me, it's extremely hard for me to write a good, honest, flowing first draft. I will do that once a month. You can edit any time of day. You
mm.
can tell good prose any time of day. So you don't have to be on to edit. And thank God for that. If I had to be on to edit, you'd be reading this book in 100 years.
Right. Well, and I think editing, when you're first learning how to write and people are telling you editing is so important, you got to edit, you got to edit, you got to edit. You're like, what the fuck? I just want to write. What are you talking about? I don't want to edit. And it seems like the mundane bit of the writing process. But I think really that's where the gold is in the editing and the paring down and the owning of it all the way down to just it's essential. And you can tell when people don't spend a lot of time
Yeah.
editing their work, whereas yours is just like punches to the face, like every sentence. And I remember reading a short story that you did where the character was a man and a woman, and the guy had like I think it was like a fantasy, right? And he had looked up his old flame on Facebook or
Oh,
something,
yeah.
and then they magically like get together, and then at the very end, like she like turns into, I don't know, some sort of monster or something and kills him.
Right.
I thought to myself that, I don't know about you, but I thought that piece was sort of like a turning point in what I had been reading from you. Like that stuff was so punchy and so clear, and the turns and the payoffs were so great. It felt like you had sort of elevated with that one, and then I think this book has really That's why that's why I wanted to talk to you, man. And I want to get it out there. And I know that there's people that listen to my podcast that will never have heard of you before. And hopefully they'll go out and read the book. I mean, I've got some great, guests coming up too, like big name journalists, people from large research institutes, stuff like that. And I want to slide your name in alongside these people, these verified blue check professional large organization people, and try to strategically help all the you and some of the other guys that I know sort of get that credibility by association. I think that we have a problem these days. Creative types of discoverability is probably the hardest part of making it work. And obviously you have to have talent, but like getting people to read your stuff and then know who you are and then take time, like make the election to pay attention to your product is the hardest part. And your book has the chops for that. So I can't wait to really get it out there, but I'm going to stop stroking you now on the book. And I want to move into a couple other things because I know that we don't have unlimited time here. I first discovered you, and I first discovered sort of this online universe out there that has developed into this thing called the manosphere, for lack of a better word. I don't really love that name, but I think it is symbolic of a loose network of guys that have sort of kind of tackled the modern culture and modern environment from all different angles, whether it's married guys or single guys or pickup guys or, from nonfiction or fiction. And I think we all kind of have similar roots. And I wanted to ask you about your online experiences. I mean, I used to see you around on the old forums and stuff like that. Like, how did you first get into this sort of universe? And would you even consider yourself part of the universe? And what do you think about it?
Okay, that's a good question. The manosphere is a weird thing. Do I consider myself part of it now? No. Was I back then? Sure. I used to write about kind of like what you described Goldman's book was, like how to get pussy. I wrote about how to get pussy online, and I was popular and successful doing so. And then when I became more of an honest artist, I became vastly less popular and successful.
Well, hold on. What do you mean more of an honest artist?
Well, so let's go back. The concept, here's how I learned about the manosphere. I used to write on OkCupid journals. They used to have a blog function as part of your OkCupid profile, and I would write on those. And they were just like a regular blog, except people would actually read them. And this horny Chinese girl from Australia wrote me a note one day, and she said, "Hey, your shit reminds me of these two guys, Huazi and Roosh. And you should check them out." And this was 2011. And right. I did. I read what is now called the Heartiste blog, which is
Royce in DC back then, right?
Yeah, it's weird to even say now because he's degraded into the Jew is using the black as, the muscle for white genocide. And
right.
Back then he used to write the best analysis of getting laid anywhere, and he was poetic about it. And it's so now there's all these conspiracy theories that he's actually now 10 people that the original guy sold the blog to, etc. And early Roosh, much the same way. He was a candid journaler who wrote about trying to get laid in a way that you could all relate to. He was the first guy that really wrote about failing to get laid. This was a thing that Neil Strauss was always a little more polished, and he really had a message, and you still that book was also sensational to me in its time, but Roosh had another level of self-deprecation and honesty to it. And I loved both of those blogs, and I wanted to make that one that was like them. And it's weird to say now because those guys have gone on to fame for political reasons. Roosh is getting banned from everywhere that the Queen of England is on the money. And Heartiste really has become a Nazi. It's not, there's people that are unfairly maligned as Nazis, and then there's actual people that are, hold racist belief. Which I don't give a shit I don't care if people hate other races. Who cares? Good. It's not my job to fucking tell anybody what to believe. I'm not. The message of my work is not be like me and think like me. However,
it's important to talk about. I think.
It blew up into this absurd thing. Now, absolutely every other person that I remember from that scene back in those days has now gone on to be a self-promoting professional who makes their living off it. And good for them, but it's become really political. It's become really right wing, which I disagree with. And it's what I had hoped was that all those guys, what I tried to do was try to have it make me a better writer. Doing all, blogging about pussy is a great way to write about at least something interesting, right?
Right.
Everyone loves pussy.
Everyone can relate to the act of trying to couple up. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a universal human experience. And if I've learned anything, it's like if you can write about something that's a universal human experience, whether it's nostalgia, coming of age, parents dying,
right.
having kids, your kids leaving the house, trying to get laid. This is what good writing is, because it taps into
Sure.
something that people can understand.
And
Uh,
the most famous guy from that scene was Cernovich. Can you believe, knowing Mike from
yeah,
back in the early days, what a phenomenon he has become?
yeah,
But it's weird because he's a good guy, and it pains me when people trash him. And it doesn't pain him; he can take it, and he in fact probably loves it in some way. But it's odd that he became a political celebrity by
isn't it?
trolling. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so weird. I mean, we read all the same stuff. Royce in DC Bachelor is what that original blog from Roosh was called,
right.
and and Mike Danger and Play, and of course we probably both remember Mike posting a ton on the Roosh forum back in the day, and like I haven't been on that forum in years. I will 100% say that Heartiste is just completely off the deep end and a psychopath, and I can't believe that, I ever publicly sort of associated myself with his writing. Also, same thing with Roosh. I feel like Roosh has really lost the plot, and it's sad to see. And, I feel bad for the guy living in like some third tier European country with no wife and no kids, and, nothing that he ever said that he wanted. He never got any of it.
Can I jump in here that there's a difference, there's a distinction between Roosh, who still does honest philosophical work. I can't comment on either man's life, but on their work, like Roosh turns out a good philosophical treatise once in a while. He's not, you can't equate him with Huazi, who, by the way, whose pussy advice I still take. I don't care how much he hates Jews. Whereas Roosh is not necessarily responsible for his persona. It got out of control, but he's still a guy that is trying to get at the truth in some way. I'm not saying that I agree with what he's found. I also don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be living in Ukraine if what you want is some traditional blue-eyed woman. I mean, that's where they fucking live, that's where they go.
I know, but the reason why I say that is because in this day and age of where you can be, I understand why you're anonymous, right? I was anonymous for some time, and I understand 100% why I was. But now that I'm completely public, and a lot of the guys that I know in the same sphere are completely public, and they're all doling out advice, life advice, you have to start judging people by their own lives, to see whether or not what they're talking about is productive and has any real value. And it's just getting harder and harder for somebody like Roosh to have any credibility about how to build a good life or how to find a woman or have a traditional lifestyle when he's been unable to do any of the above. And so,
well, is he a how-to guy though now? I think he's more of a doomsayer about Western civilization, which is something that I love to read, people saying that Western civilization is going to annihilate itself.
Yeah.
I can read stuff that has that as its thesis all day long, and that's what he's doing. I think he is not necessarily giving life, although I guess he just did release a book called Game.
Yeah.
But I don't think Roosh is putting himself out there as an example. I think he's very self-aware about the various disasters that have befallen him in recent years, and I think he's got a perspective about it. I wouldn't lump him in with the type that you're describing, which is, and in general, social media men giving male advice is always complete garbage, with very few exceptions. You know who's great is 30 Days to X, who writes about online businesses and making money, and he writes only about things that he's actually done successfully.
Right.
And there's a few other guys, but in general, I have an instinct that when I see stuff like that, it makes me puke. Like guys talking about make money, start a business, fucking lift weights. Like, yeah, stupid. I lift weight. Look, I'm in great shape. I'm still a fucking schlump. Like lifting weights is not going to solve your problems.
No, but it is a good place to start, my friend.
Yes.
It is a very good place to start. And it's been a really fascinating thing to watch what's happened in the last 10 years from these little I say niche. So these little niches, I can't stand people to say niche. Don't tell me you say niche.
I say niche.
Oh God.
I say choisi instead of roisy, and I say niche instead of niche.
Niche. You're gonna get me to say it now. That niche.
Yes.
What's happened in the evolution that's taken place, and watching the growth, and watching people that just started writing not even blog posts, forum posts, explode into big prolific bloggers, and then to Cernovich's case, like a national political figure. It's really just been a fascinating sort of. We're definitely like on the cutting edge of this cultural zeitgeist in many respects in terms of engaging with the active current dating and mating markets, your professional lives, the social media, the online universe, writing, blogging, what art is, what does writing art even look like these days anymore? What would the beats do with Twitter and with blogs, and what would various other writing generations and scenes have done with the technology that we have and that we're all generally like experts on at this point. Social media use, blog writing, self-publishing, podcasting, all this stuff. We're pushing this technology to the max and using it to connect in ways that were never possible before. And I often wonder what previous writing scenes would have looked like. If Hunter Thompson had Twitter, like what would that have been like? Or social media, or just the technology, that we have, the power of the cell phone, etc. And so, I was happy to talk to you about your experience in that evolution. And did you? I'm just changing course real quick here. Did you ever meet up with any of those guys? Did you ever go to any of the social meetups or use the internet and social media and stuff to connect in the real world and network? Did you always just sort of do it online and steer clear of that real world shit?
I met a few people,
Yeah.
and they were interesting experiences. I met Mike. I met other people that are now so anonymous that they probably don't even want me mentioning their old online names.
Right. Right.
And it was okay. Those guys, all those guys that blew up, that really became almost household names, were canaries in the coal mine. The kind of fame that they had seems terrifying to me. I'm not saying that I'm even equipped to get it if I wanted it, but I don't want it. And I would not consider myself a success on social media. I would consider myself a deliberate failure on social media.
I would agree with that.
I'm a terrible self-promoter, and I'm proud of how much I suck at self-promoting and marketing. And I think that the act of marketing something taints it. I think anything that has to be sold is not good. I don't say this about anyone else's work, but it's how I feel about my own. I don't want to have to get out there and plug it, create a larger than life persona, or pretend to be something that I'm not. Meanwhile, watch my Twitter, which is 90% me shilling my book again and again. But
yeah, well, let's drill down on that a little bit there, buddy. Like, don't you want to be just like a full-time professional writer? Wouldn't that be like the dream?
It would be nice to not have to go to work in the morning.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing because I've now written 3 books while having a full-time job. And what's more, hating having to go to work gave me a lot of the energy necessary to write those books.
Yeah.
So it's a weird question. I've also been unemployed, and I look back at my writing from those times, and some of it's good and some of it's not. And a lot of it is, I look back at my old journals, and a lot of them are about being bored and having nothing to do, think about, experience, or write about. I don't know what the answer is. And I've forgotten the original question. Do you remember?
The question is like, if you, what, I guess your priority isn't becoming commercially successful, because then you'd hate yourself for it.
Here's what I want: someone else to fucking plug my shit for me while I write it. I feel like I wrote the fucking book and that should be enough. Like,
Yeah.
waking up and going to work 40 hours a day to pay the rent and then writing a book on the goddamn weekend is plenty of work for me. I would just as soon fucking play Xbox with the rest of my time. I The other thing is that you get the sense that, like, okay, I want to have a viral tweet. What would I have to do to make it happen? Well, it would be something about, Donald Trump and the Russia investigation or some other topical horseshit and blah, blah, blah. And I'd try 10 of those and one of them would stick and that would make me famous. The idea of doing that is repulsive to me. B, it's just not, how am I going to use something that is dishonest? And I think all marketing and sales is fundamentally dishonest.
I'm not even going to let you finish.
How are you going to use something dishonest to promote something that is whose point is to be honest?
How is that? I don't think that that's universally true. I mean, I would like to think that I've been successful in promoting both my sort of first person narratives and like personal experiences, as well as a nonfiction book. And I feel like all of it was completely honest. And I find personally that the more honest and more authentic I am, the more revealing and true I am, the easier it is to spread the message.
That's interesting. And you're hunting a different beast, I think. You have a different personality. And it's something that I've struggled with, the concept of a character and a persona. This is something that people ask me a lot about blogging. Is like, well, do you ever get tired of the persona, the Delicious Tacos persona? I don't fucking have a persona. This is what I'm really like.
Right.
And do I ever get tired of it? Every day. Every fucking second, I'm extremely tired of it. I didn't mean that to trash you, although I realized that I said it in a way that was deliberately dickish. But you got to understand that it's directed at myself, against the instinct to compromise what I might say in order to please an audience. I never want to be working to please an audience. I love my beloved readership, every single one of you, anyone who's read my book. I love you, and you can also suck my dick. I will never change as much as a fucking punctuation mark to please you. And if you don't like it, fucking suck my dick. Go read fucking Twilight, asshole. This is mine. This belongs to me, right? Yeah. This belongs to me, and I will not, I would rather watch my child be thrown into a bonfire than have somebody edit my work. So at the same time, what would be nice is if I had a publicist who would fucking sell it, However, my AA sponsor has always asked me, why don't you submit your book to publishers? And the reason is because publishers, it's not even about the money, even though every time you buy my book, I make $5. And if I had a publisher, I would make 4% of the cover price, which I don't know what it is, but it's a lot less than $5. But also what publishers want is somebody that can promote themselves. They want you to be your own marketing department. So what the fuck do I need you for?
Right.
What are you? Why do you exist then?
Yeah. Right. Unless there's someone they want to promote, which means you're already famous. There's really very little payoff to it. Right. As far as I can tell.
The other thing is, so I really only have 3 things that I do: blog, books, and Twitter. My blog is delicious-tacos.com. My Twitter is delicious_tacos for those listening. But I think all of those things need to exist for their own sake and not as a promotional tool. Twitter is a place to post stupid pictures and have fun. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. And it's not a very effective promotional tool for me either. It doesn't drive a lot of traffic to my site. It doesn't move a lot of books. My blog moves a lot of books.
Yeah, I mean, that's your primary source of getting the word out there, right?
Yeah. If I don't keep blogging, my book sales go in the toilet right away. So, and if I keep blogging, that's why I put up a fuckload of posts in December, and that's why it sold so well in December.
Huh. Yeah. Very interesting. And for me, it's like almost, I can't even delineate because of Amazon doesn't tell you where your sales come from. You can't see if they found your book by searching it in Amazon, or if they followed a link you posted from your blog, or if you follow a link that you posted on Twitter.
But you can see on your website who clicks out to Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. And I can also see the more Twitter impressions I get, the more book sales. So like there's a direct correlation, but it converts really shittily. I mean, I did like almost 10 million in the last month, and it's still not enough to 10 million impressions on Twitter in the last month, and it's still not enough book sales to, mean like I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Or just based on
Twitter used to drive traffic elsewhere, but Twitter doesn't, it's not good for Twitter if you click on a link and go to another website. So Twitter
yeah,
is built to keep you in Twitter.
yeah.
It doesn't
But
drive. Twitter used to drive enormous web traffic. I got one tweet from Croisy, which I'm going to say in the French way over and over again to irritate you. Croisy, which is the name of the actual chateau in the story of O, which is
oh,
why
I did
which will
not know
explain something. But one tweet from him when he had 6,000 followers got me 3,000 views. Can you imagine
that. Wow.
50% of someone's followers clicking on a link now?
No, no.
No,
It's like
it's
2%
yeah, 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, I don't want to change one punctuation mark in a fucking tweet to please people who might buy my book either. Like, buy it or don't.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I make is not a marketable thing. Does not have a wide appeal. Most normal people who are given my books actively hate them. This has been an issue for me where a friend of mine is a woman. Like, the women in my life love my books. The men that are acquainted with those women hate me and, will always say that I'm a rapist and all this other horse shit whenever they find out that I'm a writer.
I don't find anything that you had written to be any more offensive than anything I'd ever read from Bukowski, for example.
Yeah, well, we don't live in 1972.
Yeah, isn't that a thing, huh? It's amazing how much more puritanical we've become. Whereas I thought that part of the liberal revolution in the 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s was about opening up our norms and allowing people to be a little bit more free with their sexuality and the things that they do. But in fact, and this is a great segue to one of the last things I want to talk to you about. But in fact, what's happened is people can write about sex even less. People can talk about sex even less. And I think it's also sort of dovetailing with private sexual practices that are even maybe crazier than they were in the past, but yet you can't talk about it. And if you do write about it, somehow you're diminished professionally, or, I always joke. It's like, why is writing about sex like somehow less professional than writing about like local news stories? Like, I don't understand the comparison there. And I've read many articles recently that say men can't write about sex anymore. How Me Too killed Playboy and Penthouse. How, there's no men out there who are writing about sex. And it just, my first instinct is that's complete horseshit because I know guys that are doing it. But what's your take on that? What's your take about our current culture and the way it relates to sex writing, men writing about sex, men being honest about their experiences as men, and putting that out there rather than wrapping it in some sort of politically correct packaging in order to assuage the PC monsters and the Me Too maniacs out there?
Well, it's interesting when you say men writing about sex. I think I take it to mean you talk men writing about being horny. That's one of the things that I do a lot, is writing about just the insane intensity of the state of horniness and the things that you get horny for instance, young teen girls. I mean, 18 plus, of course.
Of course.
So it's a very big question that you asked. My take on this topic is, there's no difference in the law. The government is not going to throw you in jail for anything you write. However, if you need a job, a corporation has absolute power over you. They can control whether you eat, whether you pay your mortgage, and whether you can turn on the lights in your beautiful home. And it's very easy to scare a corporation. And America is a corporate state that is run by these satanic institutions that have complete power over their employees. And I don't think there's any solution to it. I think it's going to get worse, and we're going to continue to be fucked. You can write whatever you want as long as you don't need to eat, right? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've got a wife and kids, right? So you're fucked. You really have somebody that you have to take care of and protect. I don't even have that, and I'm terrified of
Yeah.
being unemployable.
Yeah. I became unemployable about a year ago.
That's
And
right.
I never,
You're the famous anti-Semite and white nationalist Jack Murphy that I've heard about, aren't you?
yes, the half Jewish anti Semite who ran schools for poor black kids in the city.
That's
Yeah.
right. And you were, I believe, from what was implied, those schools are extermination camps for
right. Right.
your genocidal views.
That's right. I was rounding up poor black kids, and instead of giving them better educations, I was shipping them off to some sort of horrible death and destination. Yeah, so I became unemployable about a year ago, and it was because of sex writing. It was because I wrote things that were challenging to feminist orthodoxy. I even in my, it was a do feminists have rape fantasies piece, and I even cited feminist literature, and still people weren't taking it as a response to existing literature and an intellectual dialogue that was laced with satire and sarcasm. They couldn't understand that, so instead they just fired me. Also because I questioned, open borders. Like, oh, let's just at least have a conversation about it. And they fired me. They banned me from coaching Little League. They took away my income. They took away my stability for my family financially in some respects. And luckily I've got a history of financial activities that have allowed me some comfort, and I have a lot of great support. So I'm still living in the same house, but I could see how for somebody that wasn't as properly set up, that this would be a devastating, life-changing, in the gutter, on the streets kind of thing. Like, they
Well,
did really strip away my main source of income and destroyed my professional reputation forever. Now, I say I wrote it, there's no question, but it's like the interpretation, the malicious interpretation, and the reaction is what I'm feeling the consequences of.
I hope they have a child molester coaching the Little League team now.
Oh boy. Well, I actually have a meeting coming up when this thing's published. I've already had the meeting and see if I can get back into the coaching, because I do miss that quite a bit. But you're right. People that work in corporate America are definitely slaves to the corporate system. They have complete and total control over your life. They can pull the plug on you at any second. There's no loyalty. There's no dedication. There's no safety network. And I can see why people don't want to take risks. But I don't know, man. I can't not. I have a uncontrollable urge to express myself, to write things down, to talk about sensitive issues, to digest complicated matters and spit them out back into the world, dripping with my own emotion and personal experience. I can't stop it.
Well, what can you do? If I had it to do again, I would have had better operational security. I would have stayed more anonymous.
Yeah.
In a sense, I mean, either of us could have not had any problems if we hadn't shown our fucking faces.
Right.
If I hadn't told all my OkCupid dates about my fucking blog and my books, but then I wouldn't have got laid, which was even worse than getting fired,
Right.
What can you do? Of course, it is always not to victim blame, but it's my own fucking fault. I put my fucking face out there. I put my voice out there, which I'm now doing again on this podcast. And I did not protect my identity at all. I just moved, but for 7 years, you could go on my blog and find my exact, not necessarily my address, but you could definitely find it in Google Maps. And a couple people did show up to my fucking house. Weirdos.
No shit.
Yes, one guy came to my house to kick my ass. I wasn't home.
Oh my God. Is this like triangulating the duck pond and some other shit?
The guy that came to kick my ass was a personal thing. He was mad that I was trying to bang his girlfriend. So it's not. Then there was one other weird Elliot Rodger-esque weirdo that showed up and ranted in front of my apartment. Again, I wasn't home, but I had a friend staying with me who pointed this out to me, that there was this young man pointing at my apartment, screaming and ranting while I was at work. Now, if you're going to do the research to find out where I live, you also know that I have a job, so you can't show up between 9 and 5 on a fucking weekday and expect me to hear what you have to say, stupid.
It's dummy.
Yeah.
Well, some people reading is challenging for some people.
Yeah. So it was easy to murder me back in the day, but less so now.
So what's next for Delicious Tacos? So this book, finally, some good news,
Yes.
is a rocket blast of a novel. It's a straight fiction laced with purely historic, like accurate autobiography, social criticism, modern commentary, excellent tight prose, complicated structures. Really a masterpiece, I think. And
Thank you.
what's coming up next? What do you see for yourself, your creative output? What thesis do you want to write about in the future? What's up?
My next book is called True Love. And it's a fantastical novel about true love.
Is that right?
Yes, and I'm going to take my time with this one. Finally, Some Good News is a very short novel. I think this is going to be. I mean, Finally, Some Good News in terms of word count is a novella. It's very quick.
I was going to use that word, but I didn't want to be insulting. So yeah, it's like a novella.
It's meant for what I wanted with this is something that people could sit down and read and zip through it, and then start it again and read it again.
Yeah.
This next one is going to be maybe a little bigger, a little longer, and I kind of have an idea of the tone of it, and I maybe have the last. It's like when I conceived of Finally Some Good News, I had the beginning, the last two sentences, and the cover. And this one, I kind of have the last sentence and a concept of what it's like, but it's going to take a long time. And I'll probably put out another collection too. I've got a lot of uncollected stories and essays that I'm going to do in another collection, maybe in 2019. And that's it, man. I'm going to keep doing it. I mean, I wish I could say if people buy Finally Some Good News, I will write another novel. But the reality is I'm going to write another novel, whether they fucking buy it or not. So, please buy it out of the goodness of your heart. But I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing anyway. I can't not. I'm going to continue working for a little while, for as long as I can, and saving money and living prudently. And then we'll see, man. Maybe this time in a couple of years, I'll be sitting on a beach in Southeast Asia with my beautiful golden teen wife, pregnant with my child, and spearing fish for my dinner.
Right. Well, that sounds pretty nice. I hope you can get there. I think that this book is fantastic. I think everybody should go out and get it. I read it straight through myself. I'm definitely going to read it again. My girlfriend is going to read it. She's very excited about it. It's called Finally Some Good News. You can get it on Amazon.com. Where can people find you out there on the internets, Mr. Tacos?
DeliciousTacos.com is my website. I also have another book on Amazon called The Pussy, which is popular. My Twitter is delicious_tacos. It's locked because of my doxing. So if you request to follow me, don't follow me for malicious reasons, please. And that's about it. That's my entire social media presence.
It's been working for you, and I hope that things continue to move forward in a positive direction. It sounds like you're not doing so bad living in Southern California with a job that you like and want to protect. A brand new book that's been released and is selling very well with nothing but 5-star reviews. I'm going to put my own 5-star review on there. Thank you very, very much, sir, for coming on the podcast. I know that you don't do these very often. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about your technique and your process and our mutual sort of shared experience in the manosphere and online and with writing. So again, thank you sincerely for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I hope that we can have a chance to talk again soon.
Thanks, brother.
All right. I appreciate it. Again, jackmurphylive.com. Jack Murphy Live on Twitter. Subscribe to the podcast. Sign up for the mailing list. Go to Amazon.com. First, buy Finally Some Good News, and then also buy Democrat to Deplorable. Buy one for your mom and for your dad. That's how I try to make my money these days. So please, guys, do help me out there. And we got some great guests coming up on the podcast. I will be announcing them on Twitter. Things are really moving in the right direction there. And if anybody has any suggestions of people that they'd like to hear on here, please just shoot me an email. I do read and respond to almost every email that I get, so do reach out. Thank you, everybody, and thank you again, Delicious Tacos, and we'll talk soon.